Welcome, and thank you for being here. There's no need to do anything at all. Simply allow my voice to be a soft companion as you begin to drift toward the quiet story of a choice that is almost impossible for us to understand. A choice for a room with no doors. A choice for a life sentence of perfect, unshakable silence. Before we drift too far, if you feel a connection to this place, you're welcome to leave a quiet like or subscribe. Think of it not as a task, but as leaving a soft footprint in the sand before you continue your journey inward. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave a comment with your city and the time of night where you are. It's a quiet way of knowing we're all listening together in our own peaceful corners of the world. But now all of that can fade away. All right, let the shadows in your room grow long and soft. Maybe you can hear the faint sound of your own breathing, and together, let's allow the story to begin. The first thing you notice every single morning is the noise. It's a physical thing, a wave of sound that crashes through the thin wattle and daub walls of your small home. It starts before the sun has even properly cleared the horizon. It's the sound of the world waking up, and you wish it would just hit the snooze button for once. You pull a rough woolen blanket over your head, but it's no use. The day has begun, and it has no respect for your desire for peace. You swing your legs out of bed and your bare feet meet the cold, packed earth floor. The air is thick with the smell of old wood smoke, stale sweat, and something vaguely damp that never quite leaves the walls. A bustling, striving, jostling English town in the high Middle Ages. It's a place of immense energy, and you are tired of it. You dress in your simple clothes, a linen shift, a woolen tunic over it, and prepare to face the day. The moment you unlock your door, the sensory assault begins in earnest. The street, if you can call it that, is more of a muddy trench between two rows of leaning timber-framed houses. It rained last night, and the path is a treacherous soup of mud, straw, and things you'd rather not identify. You carefully pick your way through it, your leather shoes making squelching sounds with every step. A pig, fat and surprisingly quick, suddenly darts out from an alleyway, forcing you to jump back with a yelp. It squeals indignantly and disappears into another narrow gap. The town charter says people aren't supposed to let their pigs roam free, but everyone does. It's one of those rules that is more of a gentle suggestion. Historians still find town records filled with fines for runaway pigs causing chaos, knocking over market stalls, and generally being a public nuisance. It's just another daily near-death experience. The noise gets louder as you approach the market square. It's a symphony of chaos. A blacksmith's hammer rings out a relentless, clanging rhythm. A woman is shouting about the freshness of her eggs, her voice raw and piercing. Two men are in a heated argument over a debt, their voices rising and falling in angry waves. Children, their faces smudged with dirt, are screaming and chasing a stray dog. Everywhere you turn there is motion, sound, commerce. It all feels so worldly, so profoundly and spiritually exhausting. You see the priest, Father John, trying to make his way through the crowd, and his face wears the same weary expression you feel. This is the world God made, you suppose, but it feels like it's been left on the stove too long and is starting to boil over. The air is thick with the smells of roasting meat, raw sewage from the central gutter, and the unwashed bodies of 100 people all crammed into one space. You have a deep, unshakable feeling that none of this matters. The arguments over pennies, the price of wool, the local gossip being traded over a sack of flour. It's all just static. It's a distraction from the one thing that does matter, the state of your soul. How can anyone possibly hear the soft whisper of God in a place this loud? How can you contemplate eternity when you're constantly worried about stepping in a pile of horse manure? Scholars, looking back at this time, debate the true sensory experience of the medieval person. Did the constant noise and smell eventually fade into the background, a normal part of life that no one really noticed? Or was it, as it is for you, a constant, grating presence, a kind of spiritual friction that wore down the soul day by day? The truth is likely somewhere in between, but for you, a person born with a mind that craves stillness, it feels like a personal torment. You pass the great stone church, the largest building in the town. Its walls are thick, solid, and silent. For a moment, you press your hand against the cool, damp stone. It's the only thing in this whole town that feels permanent. It was here before you were born, and it will be here long after you're gone. In the coolness of that stone, in its unshakable silence, you feel a flicker of something you've been searching for. Peace. It's just a hint, a brief moment of quiet in your mind, but it's there. And it plants a seed. You find yourself wondering what it would be like to be on the other side of that stone. Not just for an hour during Mass, but forever. To be surrounded by that silence, protected by that permanence. To finally turn down the volume of the world once and for all. The thought doesn't leave you. It follows you home from the market, a quiet hum beneath the day's cacophony. It sits with you as you eat your simple meal of dark bread and slightly sour cheese. What would it be like to live inside the silence of the church? The idea is absurd, of course, a childish fantasy. People go into the church to pray, and then they leave. That's how it works. But the seed has been planted, and in the fertile ground of your dissatisfaction, it begins to sprout. A few days later, you're at Mass, kneeling on the cold flagstones. The service is the one time of the week you feel a semblance of order. The Latin chants, though you don't understand all the words, have a hypnotic, calming rhythm. The air smells of incense and melting beeswax, a holy perfume that temporarily masks the grimy smells of the world outside. Your eyes drift around the stone interior, past the flickering candles and the crude paintings of saints on the walls, and then you see her. You've seen her before, of course. Everyone in town has. Old Elspeth. She's not at the service. She's never at the service, but she's always present. Tucked away in the corner of the church, almost part of the architecture, is her cell. You can just see the small, grill-covered window set deep into the stone wall. It's called a squint. From your angle, all you can see is darkness behind the bars, a patch of profound shadow. But you know she's in there. Elspeth is the town anchorite, a living holy woman, walled up by her own choice. The whisper of the idea you had now becomes a clear, articulate thought. That is what it would be like, to be on the other side of the stone. After the service, you linger. You watch as a few of the other town's women approach Elspeth's other window, the one that faces out into the churchyard. They speak to the wall, in hushed, reverent tones, asking for prayers for a sick child or a husband away at war. You can't hear a reply, but they seem to come away comforted, their shoulders a little less slumped. Elspeth is a local celebrity, a spiritual resource as reliable and as the church well. You feel a strange pull towards that wall, but you're too shy, too uncertain. Instead, you find Father John as HES snuffing out the altar candles. You ask him, your voice barely a whisper, to tell you about the anchoress. He sighs, a long, weary sound, but he seems happy to talk about it. He explains that it's a very old and very holy tradition. A soul feels a calling, a desire to withdraw completely from the world to focus solely on God. It's not for everyone, he stresses, looking at you with a kind but searching gaze. It's an extreme path, a vocation for the strongest, the most devout, a life of prayer, contemplation, and solitude. You learn that the word anchorite comes from a Greek word, an HRN, which means to withdraw. It is a deliberate, radical retreat from the temptations and trivialities of society. It is a way to become an anchor for the community, holding it fast to God through constant prayer. It sounds less like a retreat and more like a battle, a solitary siege against the forces of darkness, waged from a single, unreachable fortress of stone. He tells you that most anchorites, perhaps surprisingly, are women. Historians centuries later will confirm this, noting that for every male anchorite, there were often 4 or anchoresses. The reasons for this are complex and still debated. Was it because women were considered more susceptible to sin and therefore needed more protection? Or was it because, in a world that offered women so few choices, this was one of the few paths to autonomy, respect, and intellectual freedom, but taken to the most extreme conclusion imaginable? For a woman, becoming an anchorite meant you were no longer under the authority of a father or a husband. Your only authority was God and, by extension, the bishop. It was a strange and paradoxical kind of liberation. He also mentions a quirky, and to you, deeply appealing detail. Most anchorites were allowed to keep a cat. Not as a pet, he clarifies quickly, but for the practical purpose of keeping the cell free of mice and rats, which might nibble at the sacramental bread or just generally be a nuisance. You smile at this. The thought of a small, warm, purring creature in the midst of all that holy solitude is a strangely comforting image, sanctioned crack of worldly softness in a life of spiritual austerity. As you walk home, the world seems different. The noise of the market is still there. The mud is still treacherous, but it all feels more distant now, as if you're already viewing it from behind a pane of glass. The vague desire for quiet has solidified into a specific, tangible ambition. It's no longer a fantasy. It's a path. A difficult, terrifying, and utterly compelling path. You look at your small, crowded house. You look at the faces of your family, whom you love, but who are also part of the noise, the demands, the endless churn of daily life. And you feel the call growing stronger. The whisper has become a clear, insistent voice in your head, and it's saying the same word over and over. Withdraw, withdraw. The decision, once made, settles in your soul with a terrifying, unprofound weight. It's one thing to fantasize about a life of perfect solitude. It's another thing entirely to set the wheels in motion. You know this isn't a career path you simply choose. You can't just knock on the church door with your bags packed and a cat under your arm. This is a holy vocation, and it requires official sanction. You have to be approved, and that means you have to face the bishop. A few weeks later, after many sleepless nights spent in prayer and heart-searching, you finally work up the courage. You confess your desire to Father John, who listens patiently, his expression a mixture of seriousness and compassion. He tells you he will send a message to the bishop. The bishop, he explains, must personally examine any candidate for the anchoritic life. His job is to protect you from a foolish decision and to protect the church from a potential scandal. The last thing anyone wants is for a newly walled-in anchorite to have a change of heart and start screaming to be let out. The day of the bishop's visit arrives. He is a formidable figure, more allured than a simple cleric. Arriving with a small retinue of assistants and a great deal of pomp, you are brought before him in the rectory, a room that feels impossibly grand to you. He sits in a large wooden chair, his robes are fine, and he wears a heavy ring on his finger. You feel small and plain in your simple woolen dress. This is it. He begins the examination. His questions are not gentle. He wants to know why. Why would a young, healthy woman want to be buried alive? Is it a genuine calling from God, or is it, he asks with a piercing gaze, an attempt to escape from some worldly trouble? Are you fleeing a promised marriage you don't desire? Are you in debt? Are you trying to hide some secret shame? You have to answer honestly, your voice trembling at first, but gaining strength as you speak your truth. You tell him of the noise, the spiritual exhaustion, the deep and abiding pull towards a life of pure contemplation. He then tests your knowledge. You must be literate, at least in a basic sense. You need to be able to read your Psalter and your Book of Hours, the core texts of your daily devotional life. He has you read a passage aloud from a heavy, hand-scribed book his assistant places in front of you. The Latin is formal and the script is dense, but you manage, your finger tracing the words as you sound them out. Then come the psychological questions. He needs to be sure you are of sound mind. It's on amends. Do you understand the permanence of this vow? Do you understand that this is a commitment till death? There is no trial period, no summer internship in the anchor hold. He describes the realities of the life in stark terms, the cold, the solitude, the constant prayer, the risk of sickness, with no one to tend to you. He is actively trying to talk you out of it. This is part of the test. If his words can dissuade you, then you are not ready. One of the oddest and most practical parts of the interview is about your finances. As romantic as a life of pure prayer sounds, it isn't free. The bishop needs to know that you have a plan for your own upkeep. An anchorite Chaldean work, so you needed a patron, a local lord, a wealthy merchant, or your own family to provide a small endowment. This money would pay for your food, your firewood, and the wages of the one or two servants who would tend to your needs from the outside. Some anchorites were supported by the community, but it was much better to have your funding secured beforehand. You explain your own modest arrangements, perhaps a small inheritance or a promise from a relative. It's the medieval equivalent of showing proof of funds. There's a strange, almost absurd, historical debate about the financial status of anchorites. Were they destitute paupers living on charity, or were some of them surprisingly well off, managing their own little spiritual businesses from within the cell? Evidence suggests both were true. Some lived in utter poverty, while others, like the famous Julian of Norwich, seemed to have managed their affairs quite comfortably, with servants and even a will to dispose of their property. The bishop falls silent for a long time, steepling his fingers and studying you. You can hear your own heart hammering in your chest. You've said all you can say. The decision is now in his hands. He is looking for a specific quality, something the texts call discretion. It doesn't just mean being discreet. It means having good judgment, emotional stability, and a kind of grounded maturity. He has to believe you have the spiritual and mental fortitude to withstand decades of total isolation without going mad. Finally, he gives a slow, deliberate nod. God has indeed placed a heavy but holy desire in your heart, he says, his voice softer now. A wave of relief so powerful it almost makes your knees buckle, washes over you. You have passed. You have been found worthy. You have been given permission to have your life taken away. The great and terrible process has now been formally set in motion. You are going to get your room. The bishop's approval hangs in the air, both a blessing and a sentence. The abstract dream is now becoming a blueprint. Before the mason can lay a single stone, you have to design your new home. And your tomb? The two are, of course, The same thing. This isn't a matter of choosing curtains or deciding where the furniture goes. This is about planning the precise dimensions of your entire world for the rest of your natural life. You meet with Father John and a master mason, a man whose hands are calloused and dusted with stone powder. He looks at you with a kind of baffled respect. AHES built houses, halls, and half the church you're standing in, but this is a special kind of job. AHES not just building a room, AHES building a cage for a willing bird. The location is the first and most important decision. Most anchor holds, or anchor houses as they were sometimes called, were built directly against the wall of a church. This was for both spiritual and practical reasons. Spiritually, it tethered you to the heart of the community's religious life. Practically, it meant you only had to build 3 walls instead of 4, which was a significant saving in labor and materials. You walk around the outside of the church, trailing your hand along the familiar cold stone. You're choosing the view you will never see. You settle on a spot on the south side of the chancel. The south side was often preferred because it received the most sunlight, which would provide a little warmth and light to the cell. A small but significant mercy. It's also close to the high altar. Next, you discuss the size. You're not planning a grand suite. Anchor holds were notoriously small. A typical cell might be 12 feet square, though some were even smaller, barely more than a large closet. You decide on a modest size, just big enough for your needs. Space for a simple bed or pallet, a place to kneel and pray, and perhaps a small table for your books. You don't want it to be comfortable. Comfort was a temptation. Then you plan the windows. This is the most crucial part of the design. An anchor hold typically had 3. Each one was a lifeline, a carefully controlled connection to the world you were leaving behind. The first, and most important, was the squint. This was a small, narrow opening, often covered with a grill or shutter, that cut through the thick church wall itself. It would be angled precisely so that you could see the high altar. This was your television, your sacrament cam. Through this slit, you could witness the daily Mass, hear the choir, and most importantly, receive the Eucharist. A small wooden shutter on your side would allow you to close it off, giving you complete sensory control. The second window was your service hatch. This one opened to the outside, into the churchyard, but it was not for viewing the scenery. It was a small, shuttered opening through which your servants would pass your food, water, and firewood and take away your waste. A thick, black cloth was often hung over this window on the inside. When your servant knocked, you would open the shutter but not draw the curtain. You would speak to them through the cloth, and they would leave the supplies on the sill. You would never see their face, and they would never see yours. It was an interface designed for anonymity and detachment. The third window is the one that makes you a public figure. It also faced the churchyard, and it was through this opening that you would speak to the townspeople who sought your counsel. It would be covered with a grill and a shutter for security and to maintain a sense of mystery. You would be a voice from the shadows, a holy oracle. This window was your connection to the community you were serving with your prayers. It was your office. You also have to consider the more mundane aspects. What about sanitation? It's a question that makes the mason shift his feet awkwardly. There was no standard solution for this. Some more sophisticated anchor holds had a small, built-in privy, a channel that led to an outdoor cesspit. Others were more primitive, relying on a simple chamber pot that would be passed out through the service hatch. This is a point of debate among historians. Just how unpleasant was the air inside a stone box inhabited for 50 years? The ANC René Wyss, The famous 13th century guide for anchoresses delicately advises that one should not be over-anxious about stinking filth. You make the best arrangements you can, hoping for a design that is more hygienic than not. And finally, you discuss the door, or rather, the lack of one. There would be a doorway, of course, for you to enter on the day you are enclosed. But as soon as you are inside, the mason will brick it up. He will plaster over the new stonework, making it a seamless, permanent part of the wall. That finality is the whole point. You look at the rough sketch the mason has drawn on a piece of slate. A small box with 3 little openings. It looks like a child's drawing of a house, but it's your future. It is the architectural manifestation of your soul's deepest desire. An escape pod from the world. A fortress for God. You nod your approval. The plans are set. The next sound you hear will be the chime of the mason's chisel on stone. The days between the planning and the enclosure feel strange and dreamlike. The world which you have so longed to escape suddenly takes on a sharp, poignant clarity. The colors of the autumn leaves seem brighter. The taste of fresh baked bread from the communal oven feels richer. The laughter of your family, which was once part of the noise you sought to flee, now sounds like a precious, fading music. You are living in a series of lasts. This is your last walk through the bustling market square. Your last time feeling the rain on your face. Your last time watching the sunset paint the clouds in shades of orange and pink. You are becoming a connoisseur of sensations you are about to renounce forever. It is a slow, deliberate act of saying goodbye, not just to people, but to the very experience of being in the world. A week before you are to be sealed in, you hold what can only be described as a final feast with your family. It is not a joyous occasion. It is thick with an unspoken grief. Your mother weeps silently into hers too. Your father sits staring at the fire, his face grim and unreadable. Your siblings try to make small talk, but the conversation falters, dying in the heavy atmosphere of the room. They are mourning you, even though you are sitting right there, alive and well. They don't understand. You've tried to explain, but your calling is a language they cannot speak. To them, you are throwing your life away. You are choosing a living death. They see the stone cell, the solitude, the hardship. They cannot see the spiritual freedom, the profound peace you are seeking. They are losing a daughter, the sister, and while a part of your heart takes for their pain, another part is resolute, unshakable, and the loneliness of that has already begun. You give away your worldly possessions. It is a surprisingly quick process. You don't own much. A few woolen dresses, a pair of sturdy shoes, a small wooden chest your father made for you. You press a small coin you had saved into your brother's hand. You are divesting yourself of your own life, piece by piece. It's a bit like being your own executor. This process of detachment is a core part of the preparation. You cannot take the world with you into the cell. There is a strange, little-known historical fact about the possessions of an anchorite. While you renounce personal wealth, the cell itself was sometimes surprisingly well furnished. Relatives show anchorites bequeathing items to their successors or servants' featherbeds, extra sets of linen, even silver spoons. It seems that while you were dead to the world, you could still own property within your tiny kingdom of stone. This paradox renunciation on the one hand, and a strange sort of domesticity on the other is something historians still puzzle over. You also meet the women who will be your servants, your maids. They are usually local widows, pious and discreet, who will be your only regular human contact. You will not be their mistress, but their charge. Their duty is to keep you alive. You explain your dietary needs: simple plain food, bread, pottage, ale, nothing too rich or savory that might inflame the passions. You instruct them on when to come, how to never, ever try to peer through the curtain. You are establishing the strict protocols that will govern your relationship for decades to come. You are a general, planning the logistics of a very long and very static campaign. On the final night, you lie awake in your familiar bed for the last time. The house is quiet around you. You hear the soft sound of your father snoring in the next room. You can smell the lingering scent of wood smoke and dried herbs. These are the sensory details of a life you are about to erase. You feel a pang of fear, a cold knot in your stomach. Is this a mistake? Are you truly strong enough for this? The temptation to get up, to run away, to choose the loud, messy, vibrant world is immense. But then you turn your mind to God. You begin to pray, reciting the Psalms you know by heart. The familiar words are a comfort, a shield against the fear. You think of the stone cell waiting for you, of the profound, unbroken silence it promises. The silence is not an emptiness. It is a space cleared of all the world's clutter, ready to be filled with the presence of the divine. The fear subsides, replaced by a calm, solemn resolve. You are not running from the world. You are running towards something else. You are giving up the sun, but you are hoping to see a greater light. You are giving up human conversation, but you are hoping to speak with angels. It is a transaction that seems insane to everyone around you, but to you, it is the most rational deal you could possibly make. You are trading a finite, noisy, temporary life for a chance at an infinite, quiet, eternal one. As you finally drift into a shallow sleep, you know that when you wake, it will be to the day of your own funeral. The morning of your enclosure dawns gray and somber, as if the sky itself is holding its breath. You dress not in your usual clothes, but in a simple white shift, the garment of a penitent or a corpse. There is no meal. You are expected to fast. Your family watches you with a kind of hushed-on terror. You are no longer just their daughter. You are becoming something else, a holy spectacle, a public sacrifice. The church bells begin to toll, not the cheerful, ringing peal that calls people to Sunday Mass, but a slow, solemn, single bell, a funeral knell. It is tolling for you. You walk from your home to the church, and it feels like the whole town has turned out to watch. They line the muddy lane, their faces a mixture of pity, reverence, and morbid curiosity. You are the star of a very strange and solemn parade. You keep your eyes fixed on the ground in front of you, focusing on the rhythm of your own breathing. As you reach the church door, the bishop is there to meet you. He is in his full, imposing vestments. He sprinkles you with holy water, a rite of purification. Then you enter the church. It is packed with people, more than on Easter Sunday. The air is thick with the smell of incense and unwashed humanity. You walk down the central aisle, a single, lonely figure in white, and you lie down on a black draped bier before the altar. It's a piece of stagecraft, but it's profoundly effective. You are playing the part of the deceased. The bishop begins the ceremony. It is the Mass for the dead. Missa pro defunctis. He chants the Latin prayers for the repose of a soul that has departed this life. He is singing your requiem. The choir chants the Dies Irae, the hymn of the Day of Judgment. It's all for you. You lie there, listening to the prayers being said for your own soul, and it is the most surreal experience of your life. The idea is to make the death to the world explicit, final, and irreversible. This ritual is one of the most powerful and, to modern minds, unsettling aspects of the anchorite tradition. Scholars of liturgical history debate the exact form this ceremony took from place to place, as it wasn't perfectly standardized. Some accounts suggest it was a dramatic and emotional affair, with the anchorite's family weeping as if at a real graveside. Others imply it was more stoic and formal, but the core element was always the same. You were ritually declared dead to the world before you were physically entombed. After the Mass, the final part of the ceremony begins. A procession forms. The bishop leads the way, followed by the priests, and then by you. You carry a single, lit candle, your small flame against the vast darkness you are about to enter. You walk to your newly built cell. The door stands open, a dark, waiting mouth in the fresh stonework. The air inside smells of damp mortar and cold earth. You stand at the threshold. The bishop gives a final blessing. He anoints your forehead with holy oil. He might say something like, "May God grant you perseverance." Then he gently guides you over the threshold. You step inside. You turn and face the crowd one last time. You see your mother's face, streaked with tears. You see your father, his expression like stone. You see Father John, his face full of a solemn pride. You see the faces of your neighbors, the people you have known your whole life. You are memorizing them, taking a final snapshot for the long, dark years ahead. Then you turn away from the door and face the interior of your cell. You hear the shuffling sounds as the masons move into place. You hear the scraping sound of a trowel while scooping up wet mortar. Then the dull, heavy thud of the first stone being set in place. Thud, scrape, thud, scrape. It is a slow, methodical rhythm. With each stone, the rectangle of light that is the doorway shrinks. The faces of the crowd disappear, piece by piece. The coughs, the crying begin to muffle, growing more and more distant. The light becomes a thin sliver, then a pinprick, and then nothing. You are plunged into an absolute, profound darkness. The only light is the small, flickering flame of the candle you still hold in your trembling hand. The sound of the trowel continues for a while. A muffled scraping on the other side of the wall. It is the sound of your connection to the world being severed. It is the sound of your tomb being sealed. You are now officially, and for all intents and purposes, buried alive. The sound of the mason's work is the last sound of your old life. The rhythmic scrape and tap is a countdown. With each repetition, the world you knew gets further away, separated by another layer of stone and mortar. You stand perfectly still in the center of the small, dark space, the candle in your hand casting huge, dancing shadows on the new walls. You are the only living thing in a stone box. Finally, the scraping stops. There is a moment of indistinct shuffling, the muffled sound of voices fading away, and then silence. It is a silence unlike any you have ever known. It is not the quiet of a sleeping house or the stillness of a forest at dawn. This is a manufactured silence, an artificial void. It is heavy, pressing in on your ears. It is so absolute that you can hear the rush of blood in your own head, a soft, whooshing sound that you've never noticed before. You can hear the gentle hiss of the candle flame. You can hear the almost imperceptible rustle. You take a slow, shaky breath. The air is cold and smells of damp earth and wet stone. It's the smell of a crypt, the smell of your future. Your first instinct is to scream, to bang on the freshly sealed wall and demand to be let out. The finality of your situation crashes down on you with the force of a physical blow. What have you done? The bishop's warnings, your family as dares, your own fleeting moments of doubt, they all rush back into your mind, sharp and terrifying. This is the first great test, the one that happens just moments after the choice becomes real. Historical accounts and guides for anchorites, like the ANC Rene Wiss, are full of warnings about this initial wave of panic and despair, which they often personified as a temptation from the devil. He is having his last, best shot at you, trying to break your resolve before it has even had a chance to set. You force yourself to stand your ground. You've prepared for this. You close your eyes, though it makes no difference in the oppressive darkness, and you begin to pray. Not with grand, formal words, but with a simple, desperate plea for strength. You focus on the words, using them as an anchor in the swirling sea of panic. You repeat the name of Jesus over and over, like a mantra, a shield. Slowly, very slowly, the wave of terror begins to recede. It doesn't disappear entirely, but it becomes manageable, a dull ache of fear rather than a sharp, stabbing panic. Your breathing evens out. Your heart stops hammering against your ribs. You have survived the first assault. With the candle held high, you begin to explore your kingdom. It doesn't take long. The walls are rough, new stone, the mortar still dark and damp in the cracks. You run your hand over the surface. It's real. So real. You see your pallet bed in one corner, a simple straw-stuffed mattress on a low wooden frame. In another corner is a small wooden chest containing your only possessions. Your psalter, your book of hours, a spare shift, and a woolen blanket. That's it. That is the sum total of your material world. You find the 3 windows. The squint facing the church is just a dark hole for now. Its shutter closed. The service hatch, facing the churchyard, is also sealed tight. And the 3rd window, the one for visitors, is a black, barred square. They are not windows in the conventional sense. They are portals, each with its own specific and limited purpose. For now, they are just holes in your prison. There's a strange and little-known detail that archaeologists sometimes find in the excavated remains of anchor holds, remnants of plaster and even paint. It seems some anchorites, far from living in a bare stone tomb, actually had their cells plastered and whitewashed, which would have made them much brighter and less damp. Some may have even had simple devotional images painted on the walls. It's a reminder that this life, while austere, was not always one of complete and utter squalor. The level of comfort an anchorite experienced is a topic of ongoing academic discussion, challenging the popular image of a life lived in a perpetually grim, dripping cave. You sit down on the edge of your pallet bed, the candle flamed dancing and casting shadows that make the small room seem to breathe around you. The crushing silence returns, but this time it feels different. It's no longer purely terrifying. There is something else in it now, a sense of possibility. This is what you wanted after all. The noise is gone. The chaos is gone. The endless demands and distractions of the world are gone. You are left with nothing but yourself and God. It is a terrifying and exhilarating prospect. Your life has been stripped down to its absolute essence. There are no more roles to play, no daughter, no neighbor, no townswoman. You are simply a soul waiting in the quiet. The first day of your new life is almost over. You have survived. You have survived. You have passed through the ritual of death and entered into the strange, silent reality on the other side, plunging the cell into a darkness so total it feels like a physical substance, and you lie down to sleep in your own grave. You don't know how long you've slept. It could be hours or it could be minutes. In the absolute, unyielding darkness of the cell, time begins to lose its shape. There's no sunrise to mark the beginning of the day. No creeping shadows to signal its end. The world outside, with its familiar rhythm of light and dark, no longer applies to you. You are in a timeless void. Your first awakening is disorienting. For a fleeting moment, you forget where you are. You expect to open your eyes and see the familiar thatched roof of your old room, to hear the sounds of your family stirring. But there is nothing, just the blackness and the profound, echoing silence. And then memory returns, and the reality of your situation settles upon you again. A heavy blanket. Just as a flicker of the old panic begins to rise, you hear it. A sound from the world you left behind. It's the sound of a bell, faint but clear. It's the church bell ringing for matins, the first of the canonical hours, the preed on prayer service. The sound cuts through the silence, giving it a shape, a purpose. It is your new sun. You realize that your life is no longer governed by the sun, but by the 7 daily services of the church. Matins, lauds, prime, tertii, sextii, none, vespers, and finally compline. Each one will be announced by that bell. It is your clock, your calendar, your foreman. The bell will tell you when to wake, when to wake, when to wake, and when to eat, and when to sleep. Your life, which was once messy, unpredictable, sporterly, pious segments. This rigid structure was the bedrock of all monastic and anchoritic life. It was a framework designed to sanctify time itself, to turn the entire day into an act of worship. The Ancrene Wis, the guide for anchoresses, lays out this daily routine in meticulous detail. It was the essential scaffolding that prevented a life of solitude from collapsing into simple, aimless idleness. Historians debate how strictly every anchorite adhered to this schedule. Was there room for personal deviation, or was the timetable absolute? The likely answer is that it varied greatly depending on the individual and their supervising priest, but the ideal was one of perfect, bell-governed regularity. You fumble in the dark for your flint and steel. After a few clumsy strikes, a spark catches on the tinder, and you relight your candle. The small flame pushes back the darkness, and your world shrinks back to the size of your cell. You find your psalter, its leather cover cool to the touch. You open it and begin to recite the psalms for matins, your voice sounding loud and strange in the enclosed space. As you pray, you notice something else, a faint, muffled sound coming through the wall. It's the sound of the priest and choir in the church, their voices rising and falling in the familiar Latin chants. You can't make out the words clearly, but the melody is there, a ghostly echo of the service happening just a few feet away from you. You are not a participant, but you are a listener, a permanent, invisible member of the congregation. After the bells for prime have rung and you have finished your morning prayers, you hear a soft, tentative knock. It comes not from the sealed door, but from the low, shuttered opening that leads to the churchyard. Your service hatch. You pause, your heart quickening slightly. This is your first contact. You move to the window and, just as you planned, you speak through the heavy black curtain that hangs on your side. Dio gracious, you say. Thanks be to God. It's the customary greeting. A woman's voice, lightly distorted by the thick cloth, replies from the other side. Dio gracious, sister. I have your meal. You slide back the small wooden bolt on your shutter and pull it open a few inches. You see nothing but the rough fabric of the curtain. There is a scraping sound as a small wooden bowl and a clay cup are pushed onto the stone sill. Then you hear the sound of footsteps retreating. You wait a moment before reaching through the gap between the curtain and the wall. Your hands find the food. It's a bowl of simple, warm pottage, a thick stew of oats and root vegetables, and a cup of water. It's bland, but it's warm, and you are hungry. You close and bolt the shutter before bringing the food back to your small table. This is your new communion with humanity, an anonymous transaction through a hole in the wall. You will be fed like a baby bird, dependent on a hand you will never see. It's a ritual designed for humility and dependence on God's provision, channeled through the community. You eat slowly, savoring the warmth. It's a strange thing, but the pottage tastes more flavorful in the silence. With your other senses muted, the simple act of eating becomes a more intense experience. This is something you will discover again and again. In the absence of external stimuli, the internal world, the world of thought, of prayer, of sensation, becomes incredibly vivid. It's a well-documented phenomenon of sensory deprivation, though you, of course, would understand it in spiritual terms. The bell rings for tertii. You put aside your bowl and pick up your prayer book. The rhythm has begun. The silence is no longer an empty void. It is a canvas, and the bells and your prayers are beginning to paint a new kind of life upon it. The fear is still there, a low hum beneath the surface, but for the first time, you feel a sense of order, of purpose. You are not just sitting in a box. You are working. Days bleed into one another, each marked by the same steady rhythm of the bells. Your world has shrunk, but in doing so, it has also become infinitely detailed. You are beginning to master the geography of your cell. You know the exact spot on the floor where a loose stone makes a slightly different sound when you step on it. You know the unique pattern of cracks in the mortar on the east wall, a tiny, stony mountain range. Your universe is small, but you are its sole and dedicated cartographer. Today, you decide you are ready. You are ready to look. You approach the squint, the narrow, angled window that peers into the church. It is your holy keyhole, your portal to the world of sacrament. A simple wooden shutter, currently closed, covers the opening on your side. Your hand trembles slightly as you reach for the small latch. This is a significant moment. For the first time since you were enclosed, you are going to intentionally connect with the world you left behind, but on your own new terms. You slide the shutter open. The sound is a soft scrape of wood on stone. A thin blade of light, hazy with incense smoke, cuts through the gloom of your cell. It's the first new light you have seen since the doorway was bricked up. It's not the bright, raw light of the sun, but a filtered, holy light. It smells of old stone, melting wax, and the faint, sweet scent of lingering incense. You press your face close to the opening, your eye aligning with the narrow slit. And there it is, the church. Your view is restricted, like looking through a long, stone tube. You can't see the whole congregation or the nave or the high vaulted ceilings. Your view is focused by design on one thing, the high altar. It is draped in a white cloth, and upon it sit two polished brass candlesticks, their flames flickering gently. The priest is standing before it, his back to you, his embroidered vestments a patch of rich color in the dim light. It's like looking at a living painting. The scene is familiar, yet strangely distant. You are there, but you are not. You are a ghost, a secret observer. You watch as the priest elevates the host, the small white wafer of consecrated bread. The Sanctus bell rings, a clear, high-pitched ting, and you can see the sound travel through the air. Before you hear it a split second later. Through this small window, you are a witness to the central mystery of your faith, and through this act of seeing, you participate in the life of the church. This is why you are here. The squint or hagioscope is one of the most fascinating architectural features of medieval churches. They came in all shapes and sizes, from simple slits to more ornate, carved openings. Their existence is a physical testament to the importance placed on seeing the sacrament. For people who were excluded from the main body of the church, lepers in special side chapels, or anchorites like you, the squint was their lifeline. There's a niche historical debate on whether the primary purpose was to see or to hear. While hearing the priest was important, most evidence suggests the visual connection to the altar was paramount. To see the Mass was considered a vital part of receiving its grace. You stay at the squint for the entire service, mesmerized. You watch the familiar rituals unfold from your secret vantage point. You see your neighbors, the people from the town, go up to receive communion. You see their faces, but they cannot see you. You are invisible, a hidden spiritual engine helping to power the town. The thought fills you with a sense of profound purpose. After the Mass is over and the congregation has dispersed, a small boy, an altar server, comes to snuff out the candles. You watch his small, busy for moving in your narrow field of vision. He glances over in the direction of your wall, his expression one of childish curiosity and a little bit of fear. To him, you are a monster in a box, a bogeyman, a local legend. When the church is empty and silent once more, you reluctantly slide the shutter closed. Your cell is plunged back into its familiar darkness, but the darkness feels different now. It has been punctuated. You have a connection. You have a view. It's not a view of mountains or fields, but it's the only view you need. You have learned how to look out, but soon you will have to learn how to deal with the world looking in. You find yourself glancing at the other window, the one that faces the churchyard, the one with the black curtain, the public window. You haven't heard any knocks there yet. The town is giving you time to settle in, to adjust to your new reality. But you know they will come. They will come with their troubles and their requests, seeking the wisdom of the holy woman in the wall. You are not ready for that yet. The thought of speaking to someone, of offering counsel, is daunting. For now you are content to be a silent observer, watching the heart of your world beat through a tiny hole in the stone. The silence of your cell is your constant companion, but after a few weeks, you begin to notice that it isn't entirely silent. There are small sounds, the scuttling, scratching sounds of mice in the straw of your mattress. You knew this would be an issue. Your cell, dark and occasional, containing crumbs of bread, is a paradise for vermin. It's a mundane problem, but one that could become a serious nuisance, even a threat to your meager food supply. This is why, one morning, after the customary knock at your service hatch, your maid's voice has a different tone. "Sister," she says through the curtain, "the bishop has sent a gift," as was permitted. When you retrieve the items from the sill, you find your usual bowl of pottage, but next to it is a small, squirming burlap sack. You bring it inside, your heart beating with a strange mix of curiosity and excitement. You gently untie the top of the sack. A small, furry head with wide, green eyes pops out. A cat. It is a young tabby, mostly gray with black stripes, and it looks just as bewildered as you feel. It cautiously steps out of the sack, sniffing the cold air of the cell, its tail low and uncertain. You reach out a hand slowly, and it flinches back before hesitantly leaning in to sniff your fingers. Its fur is soft. You've been given your companion. Officially, as Father John had explained, the cat is a tool. A furry, purring mousetrap. The anchoress is very clear on this point. It sternly warns the anchoress against keeping any beast save only a cat. A cow would be absurd. A dog might bark and disturb the peace, but a cat was deemed an acceptable and even necessary part of the anchoritic household. It was a practical solution to a practical problem. But and everyone who wrote and read these rules knew that it was more than that. In a life of profound human isolation, the presence of another living, breathing creature was an anchor to sanity. It was a loophole in the rules of solitude, a small, sanctioned measure of comfort and companionship. The cat, whom you decide to call dust, because he seems to be the same color as the motes you sometimes see in the sunbeam from the squint, quickly makes the cell his own. He explores every corner, his whiskers twitching. He discovers the mice almost immediately, and with a terrifying and admirable efficiency, he begins his work. The scratching sounds in the night grow less frequent, but his presence is more than just practical. He is a source of endless, quiet fascination. You watch him stretch languidly, a perfect arch of feline grace. You watch him meticulously groom his fur, a small act of order and cleanliness in this dusty space. In the long hours between prayers, you find yourself talking to him, your voice a low murmur that doesn't break the deep silence, but rather becomes part of it. You tell him about the visions you see in your prayers, about the faces you see through the squint. He, of course, does not answer, but he looks at you with his unnerving green eyes, and sometimes he purrs, a deep, rumbling sound that you can feel vibrating through the floor. There's a subtle debate among historians about the emotional lives of anchorites. The official texts emphasize a detachment from all earthly affection. You were supposed to love God alone, but the repeated, specific allowance for a cat suggests a quiet acknowledgement of the human need for connection. Did anchorites love their cats? Almost certainly. In the sparse records and illustrations from the period, the anchorite's cat is a recurring motif, a small touch of warmth in a cold, stone world. One afternoon, as you are deep in contemplation, dust suddenly leaps onto your lap, curls into a tight ball, and begins to purr. The warmth of his small body seeps through your rough tunic, a startling and incredibly welcome sensation. In this world where you are forbidden to touch another human being, the simple, non-judgmental affection of an animal is a profound gift. It doesn't feel like a worldly distraction. It feels like a small, furry reminder of God's gentle creation, a spot of grace in the darkness. He also serves another, unexpected purpose. He keeps you connected to the physical world. When you are lost in prayer, floating in a sea of spiritual abstraction, the sudden brush of his tail against your leg or his demand for a scratch behind the ears pulls you back to the present moment, to the solid reality of your cell. He is a small, living anchor within your larger anchor hole. As the days turn into weeks, and the weeks into months, the two of you fall into a comfortable rhythm. You have your schedule of prayer, and he has his schedule of sleeping, hunting, and demanding attention. The silence of the cell is no longer empty. It is punctuated by the soft patting of his paws, the tiny crunch of him eating a mouse, and the steady, comforting rumble of his purr. You are still alone, but you are no longer lonely. You have your cat. He is your friend, your confessor, and your link to the simple, uncomplicated warmth of life itself. Your life is now a well-oiled, if very strange machine. The bells provide the structure, your prayers provide the purpose, and thus the cat provides the quiet companionship. But the machine has a few essential moving parts on the outside, a support staff you never see. These are your maids, your attendants, the women who serve as your lifeline to the world of the living. Your entire relationship with them is mediated by the service hatch, that small, shuttered opening in the churchyard wall. It is a masterpiece of managed interaction. Twice a day, like clockwork, you hear the familiar, soft knock. You never open the shutter until you hear the maid announce herself. It's a security measure, though what thief would want to break into an anchor hold is a mystery. You have two of them, a woman named Agnes and her daughter Matilda. You know this only because you heard them talking to each other once, their voices muffled as they approached. Agnes is the one who speaks to you, her voice steady and respectful. Matilda is silent, a ghost. You have built a mental picture of them based entirely on the sound of their footsteps and the tone of Agnes' voice. Agnes, you imagine, is sturdy and dependable. Matilda is young and perhaps a little afraid of the strange holy woman she serves. The process is always the same. Agnes knocks. You give the Deo Gratias. She announces your meal. You unbolt and open your side of the shutter, keeping the black curtain in place. She places the food and water on the stone sill. She also takes away the previous meal's empty bowl and, most crucially, your chamber pot. This is the great, unspoken act of service that makes your life possible. The quiet, humble work of dealing with your waste. It's the least glamorous and most essential part of their job. The anchoress has very specific instructions for how an anchoress should interact with her maids. She should be kind but not familiar. She should not gossip with them or ask for news of the town. The relationship was to be purely functional. The maids were your hands and feet in the world, nothing more. You were to be their spiritual superior, not their friend. But reality is always messier than the rule book. Sometimes Agnes's voice is thick with a cold, and you find yourself adding a prayer for her health to your daily list. One day, you hear what sounds like a quiet sob from the other side of the curtain, and you have to fight the urge to ask what's wrong. To ask would be to cross a line, to re-engage with the worldly troubles you have renounced. So you stay silent, but you pray for her, whoever she is, or may be. This is the strange intimacy of your new life. You are closer to these two unseen women than to anyone else on earth, yet you will never know what they look like. Your lives are woven together, but you are separated by a wall of stone and a curtain of black cloth. There is a fascinating and often overlooked aspect of the anchorite-servant relationship that historians piece together from household accounts and letters. The servant was also the anchorite's business manager. If a local noble left you a small bequest in their will, it was your maid who collected it. If you needed more firewood for the winter, it was your maid who negotiated the price with the woodcutter. They were your agents, your protectors, your gatekeepers. Some maids became powerful figures in their own right, controlling all access to the holy person in the cell. One morning, the transaction is different. Along with your food, Agnes leaves a small bundle of herbs. For the damp, sister, she says. To sweeten the air, it is a simple kindness, an act of care that goes beyond her basic duties. You are touched by it. You crush the dried lavender and rosemary in your hands, and the clean, sharp scent fills your small cell. It's a tiny luxury, a brief respite from the perpetual smell of cold stone and dust. You learn to rely on them for everything. They bring you new candles when your supply runs low. They bring you fresh straw for your pallet. If you were to fall sick, it would be Agnes's voice you would call out to, your only hope of receiving aid. This total dependence is a lesson in humility, a constant reminder that even in your spiritual fortress, You are helpless without the charity and labor of others. You think of them as your guardian angels, though you know they are just ordinary women from the town. They are the ones who keep the machinery of your holy life running, performing the mundane, earthly tasks so that you can focus on the sublime, heavenly ones. They are the unseen foundation upon which your tower of prayer is built. You will likely live in this cell for decades, and you may outlive both Agnes and Matilda. One day a new, unfamiliar voice might answer your Deo Gratias, and you will have to build this strange, remote trust all over again. But for now, you are grateful for the steady, reliable presence on the other side of the wall, the faceless servant who is your only link to the world of warmth, food, and human care. For the first few months, your life settles into this quiet, internal rhythm. It is a life of bells, prayers, and the silent companionship of your cat. The world outside the service hatch is represented only by the disembodied voice of your maid. But you know this is only the first phase. You are an anchor for the community, and an anchor that no one uses is just a heavy stone. One afternoon you hear a new sound. It's not the confident knock of your maid at the service hatch. It's a hesitant, timid scratching at the grill of your other window, the one that faces the public part of the churchyard, the parlor window. Your heart leaps into your throat. This is it. Your public life is beginning. You stay perfectly still for a moment, listening. Dust, your cat, lifts his head, his ears twitching, comes again, a little louder this time. You take a deep, steadying breath. You are not just a hermit. You are an advisor, a spiritual guide. This is part of the job description. You rise from your praying stool and move slowly towards the window. The black curtain on your side is thick, ensuring your anonymity. You stand behind it, your presence a mere shadow. Who is there? Your voice is rough from disuse, louder than you intended in the small space. A woman's voice, trembling and thin, answers from the other side. Sister, is that you? I am Margaret. My little Thomas, he has a fever. It has been 3 days. The physician has done all he can. I was hoping you would pray for him. You close your eyes, standing in the darkness of your cell. You can picture this woman perfectly. A young mother, her face etched with worry, her hands twisting the fabric of her apron. You have seen 100 versions of her in your former life. Now one of them stands at your window, seeking a miracle. I will pray for Thomas, you say, your voice softer now. Place your trust in God's mercy, Margaret. He is the great physician. Oh, thank you, sister. Thank you. You hear the immense relief in her voice. She lingers for a moment, as if wanting to say more. Then you hear her footsteps hurry away. You are left with the weight of her request. You turn from the window and kneel. You are no longer praying just for your own soul or for the world in general. You are praying for a specific person, for a little boy named Thomas, whom you have never met. Your prayer now has a target, a purpose in the world outside your walls. It feels heavy and important. This was the primary social function of the anchorite. You were the town's spiritual specialist, a direct line to God. In an age of high infant mortality, rampant disease, and constant uncertainty, people craved a source of powerful, focused prayer. They would come to your window and leave small offerings, a penny, a loaf of bread, a candle in exchange for your intercession. You were, in a very real sense, a professional prayer. You were the celebrity at the end of a holy hotline. A few days later, another knock. This time it's a man's voice, low and gruff. A merchant whose ship is overdue, feared lost in a storm. You promise to pray for the ship's safe return. The week after, it's a farmer, His crops failing from a lack of rain. Pray for rain, sister, please. The requests begin to form a tapestry of the town's anxieties. Sickness, money, weather, love, and death. You are the focal point for all their hopes and fears. It is an immense responsibility. You keep a mental list of all the souls and situations you have promised to carry in your prayers. Thomas with the fever, John's missing ship, Arthur's dry fields. There is a long-standing academic debate about the nature of this advisory role. Were anchorites seen as passive intercessors, simply passing messages on to God? Or were they active counselors, offering genuine advice and wisdom? The anchoress sternly warns the anchoress not to become a babbling gossip, but other evidence suggests that many anchorites, particularly those who gained a reputation for wisdom, were highly sought after for their practical guidance. Part fortune teller, part saint. One of the strangest things you have to get used to is your own growing fame. You hear snippets of conversation from people passing by your cell. They speak your name in hushed, reverent tones. You are no longer the girl they used to see at the market. You are the anchoress. You are a local landmark, a living saint. It's a strange and unsettling feeling to be turned into a legend while you are still alive, sitting just a few feet away, listening. Your life is now split into. You have your inner life, a secret world of prayer, contemplation, and quiet companionship with your cat. And you have your public life, a disembodied voice that speaks words of prayer through a grill in the wall. You are becoming a paradox, the most isolated person in the town, and also the most deeply connected to its secret heart. The celebrity you have become is a person you will never meet, a creature of rumor and reverence. The real you just sits in the dark, listening. The stream of visitors to your window becomes a regular feature of your day. You learn to recognize the footsteps of your regulars. Margaret, the mother of young Thomas, comes back a week later. From her joyful, tearful thanks, you gather that the boy's fever has broken. She leaves a small honey cake on the outer sill as a thank you gift, a sweet treat your maid later collects for you. You feel a quiet, profound satisfaction, but the requests for prayers soon begin to bleed into something else. People don't just want your intercession with God, they want your opinion. They want your secrets. One evening, a voice you don't recognize whispers urgently through the grill. Sister, it's me, Isabel, the baker's wife. I need to know if you think Walter the weaver is true to his wife. I see the way he looks at the tavern maid. You are taken aback. This is not a request for a prayer for a sick child. This is gossip. The very thing the anchoress warns you about. You are supposed to be above the petty dramas of the town. You are meant to contemplate eternity, not neighborhood infidelity. You give an uncommittal answer. Pray for them both, Isabel, that they may be free from temptation. You try to steer the conversation back to holy matters, to turn her gossip into a prayer, but it's a delicate dance. You cannot be seen to be encouraging idle chatter, but you also cannot be so stern that you drive the townspeople away. They are your lifeline, your source of support. This is the tightrope you walk. You have renounced the world, but the world insists on bringing itself to your doorstep, one sordid little story at a time. You learn about the merchant who is cheating his customers by using false weights. You learn about the two brothers who are no longer speaking because of a dispute over their father's will. You learn about the young couple who wish to marry, but their families are against the match. You are becoming the town's unintentional confidant, its secret keeper. People will tell a voice in a wall things, They would never tell a priest face to face. Your anonymity is a strange kind of confessional seal. They pour out their hearts, their sins, their fears, and their resentments into the darkness of your cell. It's a heavy burden. At night, after the last visitor has gone and the churchyard is quiet, you find yourself sifting through the day's collection of human frailties. You are a repository of secrets, a living archive of the town's private life. It is a strange and intimate connection to the very society you have so thoroughly rejected. There's a curious historical question surrounding this. Did anchorites ever use the information they gathered? A respected anchorite with a reputation for wisdom was in a unique position of influence. A carefully chosen word of advice, based on the secret knowledge you'd been given, could potentially solve a dispute or avert a scandal. Did some anchorites become medieval power brokers from within their cells? It's almost impossible to prove, but the potential was certainly there. They were the ultimate insiders precisely because they were outsiders. One afternoon, you receive your most shocking confession yet. A man, his voice a low, guilty rumble, tells you that he stole a sheep from his neighbor's field. He is tormented by guilt, but is too afraid to confess to the priest for fear of the legal punishment. He has come to you for absolution, which you have no power to give. You sit in the darkness, your mind racing. You are not a priest. You cannot forgive his sin. But you can guide him. You speak to him for a long time, your voice calm and steady. You talk about penitence, about making amends. You urge him to return the value of the sheep to his neighbor, perhaps anonymously, and to throw himself on the mercy of God. You are not offering a legal solution, but a spiritual one. He leaves, sounding not absolved, as if sharing the secret has lessened its weight. You realize that your role is far more complex than you had imagined. You are not just a prayer. You are a counselor, a mediator, a keeper of the collective conscience of the town. You absorb all the messy, complicated, and often ugly emotions of the community so that they can go about their lives, feeling a little lighter. It's an exhausting task. Sometimes, after a particularly difficult confession, you have to retreat to the silence of your own peace of mind. You have to consciously scrub the grime of other people's lives' soul. You look at Dust, your cat, sleeping peacefully on your blanket, blissfully unaware of human drama. You envy his simplicity. All he knows is warmth, sleep, and the occasional mouse. He has no secrets to keep. You, on the other hand, are becoming a library of them, each one a heavy book on the shelves of your mind. Your life is one of routine and structure, a fortress of piety designed to keep the world at bay. But the mind is a treacherous country, and no wall is thick enough to keep out the invaders that come from within. As the months turn into a year, and then another, the profound silence and isolation begin to work strange magic on your consciousness. You begin to have visitors who do not knock at your window. It starts subtly, a flicker of movement in the corner of your eye in the deep darkness of the night, a fleeting whisper that sounds like your name, even though you are completely alone. You dismiss it at first, a trick of the tired mind, the strain of your ascetic life, but then they become more vivid, more persistent. The devil who you were warned about is no longer a theological concept. He becomes a real and terrifying presence. One night, you are woken from a shallow sleep by a cloying, sweet smell, like rotting flowers. You open your eyes into the familiar blackness of your cell, but it feels different. It feels occupied. You sense a presence in the corner of the room, a figure made of deeper shadow. You can't see it, but you feel its malevolent gaze upon you. A voice, smooth and persuasive, slithers into your mind. It doesn't come from the air. It speaks directly inside your head. This is pointless, it says. All this prayer, this suffering. God has forgotten you. You are alone in a box, starving and cold. And for what? The world outside is full of warmth, food, and laughter. You could have that. It's not too late. I can help you. I can get you out. Your heart freezes. This is it. The classic temptation. The one described in all the stories of the Desert Fathers. The demon of acedia, of despair, of doubt. You do what you have been trained to do. You fight back with prayer. You clutch the small wooden crucifix that hangs by your bed, its familiar shape a comfort in your hand. You begin to recite the psalms of protection, your voice a desperate, trembling whisper in the dark. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The presence seems to laugh, a soundless, mocking ripple in your mind. Words, it sneers. You think your little words can stop me. It begins to paint pictures in your imagination. A vision of a roaring fire in a warm tavern, the taste of roasted meat, the feeling of a loving hand in yours. It shows you everything you have given up, polished and perfect and unbearably tempting. This is the psychological reality of extreme, prolonged sensory deprivation. The brain, starved of external input, begins to create its own. These experiences, which modern psychology might label as hallucinations, were, for you, entirely real. They were spiritual battles, cosmic struggles waged in the 6x6 arena of your own mind. Theologians and historians still debate this fine line. Were these mystical experiences, psychological phenomena, or both? The distinction was irrelevant. The devil was real, and he was in your room. You fight all night. It is the most exhausting battle of your life, more tiring than any physical labor. You pray until your throat is raw. You cling to your faith like a drowning woman to a piece of driftwood. And then, just as the first faint toll of the matins bell rings from the church tower, the presence recedes. The cloying smell vanishes. The feeling of being watched is gone. You are alone again, drenched in a cold sweat, trembling, undoubtedly drained. You have won. These visions are not always demonic. Sometimes they are beautiful. You have moments of profound ecstasy, where the cell seems to fill with a gold enlightened. You feel a sense of peace, so complete it is almost overwhelming. You have conversations with saints, with the Virgin Mary, who appear to you as if they were standing in the room. They offer you comfort, encouragement, and divine wisdom. These are your rewards, the flip side of the terrifying demonic assaults. They are the moments that reaffirm your choice, that convince you that you are on the right path. Some anchorites, like the famous Julian of Norwich, had such powerful and structured visions that they wrote them down, creating some of the most profound mystical literature of the Middle Ages. You too begin to scratch notes on scraps of parchment your maid brings you, trying to capture the fragments of these divine encounters. But you can never be sure. The Ancients Irene Wis warns that the devil is a master of disguise and can appear as an angel of light. How do you know if your beautiful vision of a saint is genuine, or just a more subtle and dangerous form of temptation? You must constantly be vigilant, constantly testing the spirits, constantly examining your own heart for any trace of pride or self-deception. Your inner world has become a battlefield, a stage for a grand drama of salvation and damnation. The silence of your cell is not empty. It is crowded with angels and demons, all fighting for your soul. Life in the anchor hold is not a peaceful retreat. It is a constant, unending war. and the only weapon you have is faith. The spiritual battles are exhausting, but there is another, more mundane war being waged within your cell, the war with your own body. You came into this room young and healthy, but a body is not designed for a life of permanent stillness. Slowly, inexorably, the confinement begins to take its toll. It starts with a dull ache in your lower back. You spend hours a day kneeling on the cold stone floor in prayer, and the position, held for so long, becomes a form of slow-motion torture. The ache spreads to your knees, which become stiff and swollen. When you stand up, your joints crackle and pop, a sound that seems unnervingly loud in the quiet of the cell. You are living a life of extreme inactivity. You can't go for a walk to stretch your legs. You can't work in a garden or perform the physical labor that keeps the bodies of the townspeople strong. Your world is, at most, 5 paces across. Your muscles, unused, begin to atrophy. You feel a creeping weakness in your limbs. The simple act of lifting a heavy bucket of water, passed through the hatch by your maid, becomes a genuine struggle. The cold is a constant enemy. The stone walls of your cell each warmth from the air. In the winter, a damp, bone-chilling cold sets in that no amount of woolen blankets can fully repel. You have a small brazier for burning charcoal, but fuel is precious and must be used sparingly. Most of the time you are cold. This perpetual chill works its way deep into your bones, aggravating the ache in your joints. You develop a persistent, rattling cough that never quite goes away. This physical decay was a well-known hazard of the anchoritic life. Medical historians, looking at the skeletal remains found in the floors of excavated anchor holds, can see the evidence written in the bones: severe arthritis, vitamin deficiencies from a lack of sunlight and a limited diet, and bone loss from inactivity. The life of an anchorite was a recipe for chronic ailments. Some texts even refer to specific anchoritic ailments, like swollen legs from a lack of circulation. Your diet, though sufficient to keep you alive, is monotonous and lacks variety. Pottage, dark bread, weak ale, and water. It's a diet low in fresh greens and fruit. Your skin becomes pale and sallow from the lack of sunlight. Your teeth ache. You are a living experiment in the long-term effects of malnutrition and sensory deprivation. And then there are the less spoken of afflictions, the sores that develop on your skin from not being able to bathe properly, the digestive troubles from your unchanging diet. The anchoress speaks frankly about some of these issues, advising the anchoress on everything from bloodletting, a common medieval medical practice, to managing personal hygiene in the confines of the cell. It acknowledges that the body is a troublesome vessel, prone to weakness and filth, and that tending to its needs is a necessary, if unglamorous, part of the spiritual life. One day you stumble as you cross the cell, your weakened leg giving way beneath you. You fall hard on the stone floor, a sharp, searing pain shooting through your hip. You lie there for a moment breathless, the pain so intense it makes you nauseous. You have not broken anything, you realize after a few terrifying minutes, but you are badly bruised. The fall is a wake-up call. It reminds you of your profound vulnerability. If you were to become seriously ill or injured, there would be no one to care for you. You could call for your maid, but what could she do? A physician could not enter your cell. You are outside the normal systems of care. You would have to suffer through it alone, your only options being prayer and your own fortitude. This is a point of some debate among scholars. What happened when an anchorite got truly sick? While the rules were strict, some bishops' records show permissions being granted for an anchorite to receive medical attention, sometimes even from a male doctor. though always with a witness present to guard against scandal. But these seem to have been exceptions. For the most part, you were expected to endure your sickness as part of your martyrdom. You begin to see your physical suffering in a new light. It is not just a nuisance or a sign of weakness. It is part of your offering. You unite your aching back, your swollen knees, and your rattling cough with the sufferings of Christ on the cross. Your pain becomes a prayer. Your body, in its slow, steady rebellion, is not a distraction from your holy work. It is your holy work. You are sacrificing not just your freedom and your comfort, but your own physical well-being, bit by bit, day by day. You came into this cell to kill the self, and you realize now that this process is not just metaphorical. Your body is slowly, painfully, dying to the world, just as you intended. And in that decay, you find a strange and terrible kind of success. The pain in your body becomes a new, unwanted companion, a constant hum beneath the silence. In the long hours when you are not praying or speaking to visitors, you need something to occupy your mind, something to structure your thoughts and keep you from drifting into despair. You turn to your books, and one book, in particular, becomes your guide, your manual, and your closest confidant. It is the Aeons Irenaeus, or the anchoress rule. Your copy is a small, precious manuscript, painstakingly copied by a monk, that your family acquired for you at great expense. The pages are made of vellum, and the ink is a deep, rich brown. It is a guide written specifically for women like you, 3 well-born sisters who chose to become anchoresses in the early 13th century. The author is anonymous, though scholars have spent centuries trying to figure out who he was. A Dominican friar, an Augustinian canon. This book is not a dry list of regulations. It is a work of profound psychological insight, spiritual guidance, and, surprisingly, warm and gentle humor. It knows your fears, your temptations, and the unique challenges of your chosen life. Reading it feels like having a wise, kind, and incredibly eloquent mentor sitting with you in the darkness. The rule is divided into 8 parts. The first part deals with the outer rule, the practical matters of your life: diet, clothing, how to deal with your mates, the proper hours for prayer. It advises you to eat what you are given without complaint, to avoid both gluttony and extreme fasting that might damage your health. It tells you to keep yourself clean, for filth is hateful to God. It's a practical, common-sense guide to surviving the physical realities of your life. But it is the inner rule which makes up the bulk of the book that truly captivates you. This is the guide to guarding your own heart and mind. It uses a powerful metaphor. You are a bird in a cage, and your heart is a wild thing that must be tamed. The 5 senses are the windows of the soul, and they must be carefully guarded lest sin fly in. You read the chapter on sight. The author warns you to be careful with your eyes. Do not be like Eve, he writes, who looked, and lingered, and took. Your squint into the church is for seeing God, not for idly people watching. Your window to the world is for offering counsel, not for gazing out at the handsome men or fashionable ladies in the churchyard. You feel a pang of guilt, thinking of the times your eyes have lingered a little too long on a worldly scene. Then there's the chapter on hearing. This is where he warns you about gossip, about becoming a cesspool for every kind of filth. Your ears should be open to the word of God and the troubles of your flock, but deaf to idle chatter and slander. You think of Isabel and her questions about the weaver, and you resolve to be firmer in redirecting such talk. One of the most peculiar and memorable sections is a long, detailed analogy comparing the temptations of the devil to various animals. The lion is the demon of wrath, the snake is envy, the scorpion, with its fair face and stinging tail, is the demon of treachery. The bear is the sin of sloth. My personal favorite, and a detail that delights historians for its sheer strangeness, is the unicorn. The unicorn, the author explains, is the demon of wrath, so fierce it can only be tamed by a virgin, almost psychedelic passage that shows the medieval imagination at its most vivid. The anchoress is also a work of deep compassion. The author knows you will struggle. He knows you will have dark thoughts. He assures you that temptation itself is not a sin, giving into it is. He tells you that when you are assaulted by demonic visions or feelings of despair, you should not be afraid. Instead, you should be happy, because it means the devil considers you a worthy opponent. Our Lord, he writes, lets us be warred against so that we can earn our heavenly reward. This reframes your terrifying inner battles not as a sign of weakness, but as a badge of honor. You spend your days poring over its pages, the words a balm to your troubled soul. It gives you a language for your experiences. The formless anxieties and temptations that assail you are given names, categories, and solutions. The book becomes a shield and a sword. It teaches you how to be a warrior in your own mind. You are not alone in your admiration for this text. The anchoress was incredibly popular in its day, copied and translated into multiple languages. It is considered one of the great masterpieces of early Middle English prose, a work of both spiritual depth and literary artistry. For you, though, it is more than a classic. It is a survival manual. It is the voice of a wise and gentle friend, guiding you through the darkest, most difficult parts of your journey. It is the rulebook for the strange and holy game you have chosen to play. The anchoress gives you a framework for your thoughts, a way to understand the war within. But understanding is one thing, processing is another. The visions, the temptations, the constant stream of secrets from the villagers, they all swirl within the confines of your cell and your mind, creating a pressure that needs a release valve. Prayer is your primary outlet, but you begin to feel the need for something more tangible. Your maid, Agnes, brings you a small supply of parchment and a few sticks of charcoal for writing. It's a luxury, and you know it. Parchment is expensive, made from the treated skin of an animal, and the process of making it is long and laborious. But a wealthy patron, grateful for your prayers, has made a donation specifically for this purpose. At first, you are not sure what to write. You are not a scholar or a theologian. You are just a woman in a box. But as you sit with the blank parchment on your small table, the candle flame casting a flickering light, you find the words begin to come. You start by writing down the things you see in your visions. You try to capture the terrifying visage of the demon of pride, its face a shifting mask of arrogance and scorn. You try to describe the ineffable peace that fills the cell when you feel the presence of a holy saint. Putting these experiences into words gives them a shape, makes them feel more real and less like figments of a lonely mind. It is a way of mapping your own soul. Then you start to write down your thoughts, your own interpretations of Scripture. You have no access to a great library, only your Psalter, your Book of Hours, and the anchoress. But in your solitude, you read these texts with an intensity and focus that few people in the outside world could ever achieve. You turn a single verse of a psalm over and over in your mind for days, like a stone being polished by the sea, until it reveals new and unexpected facets of meaning. You write about the nature of God's love, comparing it to a warm blanket on a cold night. You write about sin, describing it as a sticky mud that clings to the soul and makes it hard to walk towards the light. Your metaphors are simple, drawn from the domestic, everyday world you have left behind, but they have a power and an immediacy that comes from your deep, focused contemplation. You are, without realizing it, becoming an author. This was not an uncommon path for an anchorite. The solitude and enforced leisure of the anchor hold created a unique intellectual space. With all worldly distractions removed, the mind was free to explore the depths of faith. The most famous example, of course, is Julian of Norwich, the 14th century anchoress whose book, Revelations of Divine Love, is the first known book written in English by a woman. She wasn't a trained theologian, but her profound mystical experiences and her ability to articulate them created a work of lasting genius. Historians continue to debate the extent of literacy and literary production among anchorites. Was Julian a rare exception, or were there many other women writing in their cells, their works now lost to time? The survival of a manuscript through the centuries is a near miracle, so it's entirely possible that a whole body of anchoritic literature has simply vanished. The thought that you are part of a secret, hidden tradition of female writers is a comforting one. Your writing is not for publication. You have no audience in mind beyond yourself and God. It is a spiritual exercise, a way of entangling the knots in your own soul. But one day, a visiting friar, a learned man passing through the town, comes to your window for counsel. You are hesitant to speak to him, feeling your own lack of education. But you find yourself sharing one of the thoughts you had written down, a simple analogy about prayer. The friar is deeply impressed. He asks if you have written more of your thoughts down. Shyly, you admit that you have. He asks if he might be allowed to read them. After much hesitation, you agree. Through your maid, you pass out a few sheets of your precious parchment. A few days later, he returns to your window, his voice full of excitement. He tells you that your writing is a gift from God. It is simple, yet profound. He asks for your permission to have it copied, to share it with other devout souls. You are stunned. The idea that your private scribbles could be of value to anyone else has never occurred to you. You feel a surge of pride, which you immediately try to suppress as a form of vanity. But beneath the guilt, there is a flicker of a new and unfamiliar feeling, a sense of purpose beyond prayer and counsel. You have found a new way to serve. Your body may be trapped in a stone cell, but your words can travel. They can go to places you will never see and touch the hearts of people you will never meet. Your prison has unexpectedly become a writer's studio. You are no longer just a passive vessel for the town's anxieties. You are an active creator, sending your own thoughts out into the world. It is a strange and powerful kind of freedom, found in the most unfreedom. As you spend more time writing, reflecting on your own unique position, a question begins to form in your mind. You notice it in the faces that come to your window, in the stories you read in the A and Cyrenaiwis, and in your own experience. You begin to wonder why so many of you are women. You think of old Elspeth, your predecessor in the cell down the church wall, who lived here for 40 years. You think of the 3 sisters for whom the rule was written. You think of the stories you hear from visiting clergy about other famous anchoresses in other towns. While there are some men who choose this life anchorites, they seem to be the exception. The anchorhold, you realize, is a predominantly female world. You look out your squint one morning and watch the life of the church in the town unfold. You see men striding through the market, conducting business, serving as priests, bearing arms as guards. They have a dozen different paths open to them, a dozen ways to achieve status, purpose, and a measure of control over their own lives. Now, you think about the women. You see your maid, Agnes, a widow whose life is defined by service and dependency. You see Margaret, the young mother, her life entirely consumed by the needs of her husband and children. You see the unmarried girls, their futures dependent on the dowry their fathers can provide in the match he can make. For most women, wife is a script written by others. Their sphere of influence is the home, their role dictated by their relationship to men, daughter, wife, mother, widow. And then you think of yourself. In this cell, you are none of those things. By becoming an anchoress, you have stepped outside the traditional framework of female life. You are not under the direct authority of a father or a husband. Your vow of chastity removes you from the world of marriage and childbirth. You control your own time, your own space, your own mind. In a bizarre, paradoxical way, the stone box is one of the only places a woman can be truly autonomous. This is a central puzzle that historians and theologians have wrestled with for centuries. Why was anchorism so appealing to medieval women? There are many competing theories. One theory, the more traditional one, is that women were seen as the weaker vessel, more susceptible to the sins of the flesh and the temptations of the world. The anchor hold was therefore a protective fortress, a way to keep them safe from sin, and to keep society safe from their potential to cause it. It was a holy quarantine. Another, more modern theory sees it as an act of subversive empowerment. In a patriarchal society that offered women few options, becoming an anchoress was a socially acceptable way to escape the confines of traditional gender roles. It was a path to education, as you had to be literate. It was a path to spiritual authority, as you became a respected counselor. It was, in essence, a legitimate career choice for a woman with intellectual or spiritual ambition. You contemplate this from your own experience. You remember the overwhelming noise and chaos of the world, but you also remember the feeling of being constantly watched, judged, and directed. In this cell, no one directs you but the bells and your own conscience. Your visitors come to you for wisdom. They do not give you orders. You have traded one kind of freedom, the freedom of movement, for another, more profound kind, the freedom of self-determination. You also consider the physical aspect. A woman's body in the Middle Ages was often a site of danger and labor. The risks of childbirth were immense, a leading cause of death. A life of physical toil wore down the body quickly. In the anchor hold, you are removed from these physical dangers. You have traded the acute risk of childbirth for the chronic ailments of confinement, a trade that many women might have considered a reasonable one. There's even a quirky, lesser-known theory that ties it to property law. In some parts of England, a woman who became an anchoress was legally considered dead, which had complex implications for her inheritance. For some women, it may have been a way to ensure their property was passed on in a specific way, or to free themselves from legal entanglements. The idea that this profound spiritual choice might be linked to something as worldly as legal strategy is a fascinating one, though it's a difficult theory to prove. You don't know the single correct answer. Perhaps it is a combination of all these things. But as you sit in the quiet of your cell, you feel a strange sense of solidarity with the unseen community of women who have made this same choice. You are all part of a secret sisterhood, a network of silent rebels who found power in powerlessness, freedom in confinement, and a voice in the stillness. You have been walled up, but you have also been set free. You are a prisoner of God. And in that prison, you have found a kingdom that is entirely your own. The years pass. You no longer count them. You measure time in the changing voices of the priests at the altar and the maids at your hatch. The sturdy, respectful voice of Agnes has grown frail and has been replaced by the now mature, capable voice of her daughter, Matilda. in turn, is now assisted by her own daughter, a young girl whose footsteps are light and quick. You have become a constant, while the world outside flows past you like a river. And as the river flows, your connection to it begins to fray. The world you renounced is becoming a foreign country, a place you remember with the faded, unreliable quality of a half-forgotten dream. It begins with your senses. You have spent so long in the dim, filtered light of your cell that your eyes have become incredibly sensitive. On the rare occasion that your maid opens the service hatch on a bright, sunny day, the sudden flood of unfiltered sunlight is physically painful. You flinch back from it, raising a hand to shield your eyes. The brilliant green of the churchyard grass seems impossibly, luridly bright. The blue of the sky is a shocking, overwhelming color. You have become a creature of the twilight, and the full glare of the world is too much for you. Your memory of the sun is beginning to change. You remember that it was warm, that it was warm, that it was bright. But you can no longer truly recall the feeling of it on your skin. You try to conjure the sensation, but it's like trying to remember the taste of a meal you ate decades ago. The memory is a hollow outline, the sensory data, erased by time and disuse. The same thing happens with other sensations. The smell of rain on dry earth, the feeling of wind in your hair, the taste of a fresh, crisp apple. These are ghosts of feelings, phantoms in your mind. Your sensory palette has been reduced to the essentials: the cold of the stone, the scent of dust and old parchment, the taste of pottage, the soft fur of your cat. Your new cat, that is. Dust has been gone for many years now, buried in a small patch of earth beneath your floor. A sleek black cat you call Shadow is now an old man himself. This phenomenon, the fading of sensory memory, is something that psychologists who study long-term isolation have documented. The brain, to save energy, prunes away the neural pathways that are no longer in use. Your mental map of the world is literally being erased. The question of how this affected the medieval anchorite psyche is a subject of intense speculation. Did it lead to a greater spiritual focus as the distractions of the world truly, neurologically, faded away? Or did it lead to a kind of madness, a disconnection from reality? You find that your memories of people are also fading. You can still picture your mother's face, but it's a static image, the face she had on the day you were enclosed. You know logically that she must have aged, that she is likely gone now, but you cannot imagine her old. The people from your past are frozen in time, preserved in the amber of your memory as they were the last time you saw them. The world you hear about from your visitors is also changing in ways you can barely comprehend. They talk of new fashions in clothing, of new conflicts in far-off lands, of changes in the town's governance. It all sounds like a story, a fable. You have no context for it. It is as remote and abstract as a tale from the Bible. One of the oddest and most poignant details comes from the records of a 14th century anchorite named Christina of Marquette. After many years in her cell, she was eventually forced to leave. The accounts say that when she came out, she was utterly bewildered by the world. She had forgotten how to walk on uneven ground, how to interact with people in open spaces. Her world had been flat, small, and predictable. The real world was a terrifying chaos of tilting horizons. You wonder if the same would happen to you. If, by some miracle or disaster, you were ever forced to leave this cell, would you even be able to function? Would you recognize the world? Or would you be like a deep-sea fish brought to the surface, unable to survive in the bright, low-pressure environment of the surface? Your reality is the reality of the cell. It is the drama of your visions, the politics of your soul, the landscape of your prayers. You have successfully detached. You have pulled up the anchor of your old life and set sail on the vast, dark, interior ocean of the spirit. The shoreline of the physical world has long since disappeared over the horizon. You are adrift, as you always wanted to be, and you have forgotten what it feels like to stand on solid ground. You have come to accept the permanence of your life. The cell is your world, and you expect to leave it only for the grave, a grave that will likely be dug in the very floor beneath your feet. The idea of ever leaving, of walking in the sun again, is a fantasy so remote it barely crosses your mind. And yet the possibility, however slim, exists. There is an escape clause. It is not a secret. The rules are clear, laid out in the canon law that governs your existence. An anchoress is bound by her vow until death. But the vow, like all sacred promises, can be dispensed by the authority that sanctioned it, the bishop. However, he would only do so under the most extreme and extraordinary circumstances. Your commitment is not a contract that can be terminated for convenience. You learn about these conditions not through a formal document, but through the snippets of news and stories that filter in through your window over the decades. A visiting priest might tell a story of a convent in another shire, or a traveler might bring news from the continent. From these fragments, you piece together the near impossible scenarios that could, in theory, set you free. The first, and most obvious, is if the church itself were to be destroyed. If a great fire, a catastrophic flood, or the ravages of war were to bring the stone walls of your sanctuary crashing down, you would, of course, be released from your cell. You would be a holy refugee. But you would not be released from your vow. The expectation would be that you would be transferred to another cell, another anchor hold in a nearby town, to live out the rest of your days as planned. Your prison might change locations, but your sentence would remain the same. The second condition is one of obedience. If the bishop, your ultimate ecclesiastical superior, were to command you to leave, you would be obliged to obey. Why would he ever do this? The historical records, though sparse, offer a few tantalizing possibilities. He might command you to leave to become the abbess of a new nunnery, your reputation for holiness being seen as a vital asset for a new foundation. You would be trading one form of religious confinement for another, a promotion from solitary to a leadership role. This was rare, but it did happen. It's a point of scholarly debate whether this was seen as a reward or a disruption by the anchoress herself. After decades of solitude, the prospect of managing a whole community of nuns might seem more like a punishment than a promotion. The third and most dramatic reason is capture. If the town were to be sacked by a hostile army of very real fear in the turbulent Middle Ages and you were to be physically dragged from your cell, your vow would be considered void. This was a concession to the brutal realities of warfare. The church could not expect you to remain walled up while invaders were burning the town around you. However, this freedom would be a terrifying one, casting you out into a world of chaos and violence. There is also a strange and much debated fourth condition, heresy. If you were to fall into grave theological error, and after repeated warnings you refuse to recant your heretical beliefs, the bishop could have you removed from the cell and excommunicated. You would be cast out not as a saint, but as a sinner, a spiritual contagion that had to be cleansed from the holy ground of the church. This would be the most terrible escape of all, a damnation rather than a release. The few records that hint at such events are chilling. Speaking of anchoresses who claimed to be receiving new gospels from angels or who developed theological ideas that challenged the authority of the church, they were not just prisoners of the church, but prisoners of its doctrine too. But what about simply changing your mind? What if, after 20 years, you just decided you couldn't take it anymore? This was the great, unspoken fear of the church authorities, and the reason the initial screening process was so rigorous. To put it simply, a change of heart was not a valid reason. You would be considered an oath breaker, a spiritual deserter. You would be counsel prayed for, and likely pressured to persevere. The social and spiritual shame of abandoning your post would be immense. You would be a walking scandal. You think about these escape clauses. They are not get-out-of-jail-free cards. They are a litany of disasters, fire, war, heresy, or the unwanted disruption of a new career. They offer no real comfort. They only serve to reality of your situation. Your commitment is total. You look around your small stone room. The walls that were once your prison have become your protection. The silence that was once terrifying is now your peace. The outside world, with its fires and its wars and its complex demands, is a place of danger and chaos. The thought of being forced back into it is no longer a temptation. It is a terror. You have what you wanted. You have a life of perfect, predictable, holy stillness. The escape clauses are not for you. They are for the rule makers, the administrators of the holy system you have entered. They are the fine print at the bottom of a contract you signed with your life, and you have no intention of ever trying to break it. You will stay. You will die here. You will die here. And that knowledge, once a source of fear, is now the bedrock of your peace. You have lived in this cell for so long that you can no longer accurately picture the faces of your own parents. You have outlived 2 bishops and half a dozen priests. The black cat, Shadow, passed peacefully in his sleep one winter, and you buried him beside dust under the floorboards. You did not ask for another. The silence in the cell is deeper now, more absolute, and you have come to prefer it. You are an old woman. The aches in your bones are no longer a novelty. They are the baseline of your existence. The world outside your window has become a parade of ghosts. You still have visitors, but they are the children and grandchildren of the people who first came to you for counsel. A young man comes to your window, his voice earnest and full of worry about his upcoming marriage. He introduces himself as Thomas. You pause, a flicker of memory stirring. Thomas, you ask, your own voice a dry, papery rustle, the son of Margaret. There is a stunned silence from the other side of the grill. Yes, sister, he says, his voice full of awe. How did you know? My mother told me you prayed for me when I was a baby, sick with the fever. You had forgotten about that. Decades of secrets and prayers have layered themselves in your mind like geological strata. But his name brought it back. You prayed for this man when he was a dying infant. Now he is a grown man with a man's worries. You have been sitting in this same spot for his entire lifetime. The thought is staggering. It makes you feel less like a person and more like a tree, a feature of the landscape that witnesses the changing seasons of human lives. This longevity was not uncommon. While the life was harsh, the protection of the cell from the plagues, famines, and violence of the outside world meant that some anchorites lived to a remarkable old age. They became living repositories of the town's history, their long memories a source of wonder and reverence. There are historical accounts of anchorites living in their cells for 50, 60, or even more years, becoming a multi-generational institution in their own right. The concerns of the villagers have changed, and yet they remain the same. They still worry about love, money, and health. But the details are different. They talk of new farming techniques you don't understand, of a conflict with France that has been rumbling on for as long as you can remember. of a sickness sweeping through a distant part of the country. A sickness. The news is alarming, but it feels remote, like a storm on a very distant horizon. The faces you see through the squint during Mass are all strangers to you now. You watch them, and they seem so young, so full of a vibrant, restless energy that you can barely remember feeling. You have become a creature of stillness, and their constant motion is almost dizzying to watch. Even the language they speak is subtly changing. You notice new words, new turns of phrase in the conversations you overhear. The English language is a living, breathing thing, and it is evolving outside your walls. Your own speech, preserved in the stillness of the cell, is becoming archaic. You are a linguistic fossil. This is a subtle point that historical linguists find fascinating. Isolated communities, or in this case, individuals, can sometimes preserve older forms of a language long after they have fallen out of common use. One day, a young woman comes to your window. Her voice is full of a familiar mix of fear and resolve. She tells you that she feels a calling. She wants to become an anchoress herself, in a neighboring town that is building a new cell. She has come to you, the most famous and long-serving anchoress in the region, for advice. You look at the grill, at the darkness on the other side where her unseen face must be, and you see yourself all those years ago. A young woman, desperate to escape the noise of the world, convinced that a stone box held the key to her salvation. What can you tell her? Can you describe the crushing loneliness of the first few months, the terror of the demonic visions, the relentless, grinding pain of a body in decay? Can you explain the strange, paradoxical freedom you have found here, the profound peace that can only be earned through a lifetime of struggle? You speak to her for a long time. You do not try to dissuade her, nor do you romanticize the life. You tell her the truth as best you can. You tell her it will be harder than she can possibly imagine, and that the rewards will be stranger than she can possibly hope for. You tell her to guard her heart, to trust in God, and to get a cat. She leaves, thanking you profusely. You are left with the echo of your own past. You have been here so long that you are now the old, wise woman in the wall that you once looked up to. You are no longer just living the life. You are now passing on its legacy. The river of time has flowed on, and you, the still stone in its center, have become part of the story that it tells. The seasons of your life have blurred into a single, long, contemplative autumn. Your body is a ruin, but your reputation is a fortress. You are no longer just the town anchoress. You are the anchoress. You are the anchoress. Your name is known throughout the Shire. Pilgrims on their way to greater shrines make a point of stopping at your window. Your counsel is sought by local lords and visiting clergy. You have, from your position of ultimate powerlessness, become one of the most powerful spiritual figures in the region. You are, in short, a living saint. The process has been so gradual that you have barely noticed it happening. It started with the small gifts left at your window, the honey cakes, the small coins. Over the years, the gifts have become more significant. A local nobleman, grateful for your prayers which he credits for his victory in a minor skirmish, endows your cell with a small plot of land, ensuring your upkeep for the rest of your life and for any who might come after you. You are a property owner. The wall of your cell has become a site of pilgrimage. People come not just to ask for prayers, but simply to touch the stones. They press their hands against the cold, damp surface as if hoping to absorb some of your holiness through osmosis. You hear mothers whispering to their children, "That is where the holy woman lies. She has not seen the sun in 50 years. You have become a story they tell their children, a local piece of folklore, as real and as mysterious as the standing stones on the hill outside of town. This phenomenon of the living saint is a fascinating aspect of medieval culture. In an age where official sainthood was a long political process controlled by the Vatican, local communities often developed their own homegrown saints. These were individuals whose piety and miraculous intercession were so strong that they were venerated as saints during their own lifetimes. The Church often had a complicated relationship with these figures, sometimes encouraging the devotion, other times trying to tamp it down for fear of it becoming heretical. The debate over what separates a living saint from a folk magician or a heretic was a very real one for church authorities. Your relics are being created while you are still alive. A snippet of thread from the curtain at your window, secretly snipped away by a pilgrim, is treated as a holy object. A fallen leaf from the tree that overhangs your cell is picked up and treasured. You have become so disconnected from the world that parts of it are being sanctified by their mere proximity to you. This fame is a strange and uncomfortable burden. It is a form of noise, a distraction from the quiet contemplation you have always sought. You are aware of the immense irony. You walled yourself up to escape the world, and in doing so, you have become a world-famous attraction. The bishop himself, a young, ambitious man you have never met, comes to visit. He doesn't just speak to you through the window. He has a chair brought, and he sits outside your grill for over an hour, seeking your opinion on a theological dispute. You, who have read only a handful of books in your life, are being asked to weigh in on matters of high church doctrine. You answer with the simple, direct wisdom that has been forged in decades of silent prayer. He leaves, deeply impressed, declaring you a true oracle of God. Your maids now treat you with a level of reverence that borders on worship. They no longer just pass your food through the hatch. They place it there as if it were an offering on an altar. They speak to you in hushed, fearful tones. You are no longer a woman they are caring for. You are a holy relic they are curating. But inside the cell, nothing has changed. You are still just you, an old woman with aching bones and a persistent cough. Your catted ginger stray who found his own way in through the service hatch one day undecided to stay is unimpressed by your sanctity. He still demands food with an imperious meow and sheds fur on your only blanket. His simple, animal reality is a comfort, a grounding force against the weight of your own legend. You know that your fame is not really about you. It is about the people outside. They need something to believe in. They need a focal point for their hopes in a harsh and uncertain world. You are a symbol, a vessel into which they pour their own faith. You did not ask for this role, but it has been given to you. You are the still point in their turning world. And so you accept it, as you have accepted everything else in this long, strange life, with prayer, with humility, and with a profound sense of the deepened, abiding mystery of God's plan. The final visitor comes not to your window, but to the very center of your soul. It is not the devil with his temptations, nor a saint with her comforting light. It is a quiet, steady presence that has been your shadow for decades, and now it steps into the room. It does not arrive with a dramatic flourish. It comes as a deepening of the cold that has lived in your bones for half a century. It comes as a weariness so profound that even lifting your head from your pallet feels like a monumental effort. The rattling cough in your chest has settled deep, and each breath is a shallow, painful struggle. Your body, the faithful, rebellious vessel that has housed you for so long, is finally, truly shutting down. You are too weak to rise for the bells now. You lie on your straw mattress, your thin blanket pulled up to your chin, and you listen to them ring out the canonical hours. Matins, lauds, prime. Each peel is a farewell to a part of the day, a part of the life that you have known. You can no longer kneel to pray, so you pray lying down, your whispered words lost in the vast silence of the cell. Your maid, the great-granddaughter of the first woman who served you, knows that the end is near. Her voice at the service hatches thick with sorrow. She leaves you small sips of broth and watered wine, but you have no appetite. The needs of the body are fading, becoming irrelevant. You are shedding your physical self, like a snake shedding its skin. The news spreads through the town. The living saint is dying. A constant, silent vigil begins outside your cell. You can hear the soft shuffle of feet, the occasional muffled sob. They are not praying for your recovery now. They are praying for your soul's journey. They are waiting for the moment when their living saint will become a true, heavenly one. The priest, Father Thomas, the baby you prayed for, now a stooped, gray-haired man himself, comes to your squint. This is the one window you can still manage. Your maid helps prop you up so you can see through it. He brings you viaticum, the final communion, the food for the journey. He holds the consecrated host up to the grill of the squint. As there is no way to pass it through, he simply gives the blessing, and you receive the sacrament spiritually, an act of pure faith. This was the ultimate question for an anchorite: how to die. The logistics of the last rites were a serious concern. While some very rare exceptions might have been made for a priest to enter the cell to administer extreme unction, the final anointing, most like you would have received their final spiritual care through the squint. This physical separation, maintained even at the moment of death, was the ultimate testament to the integrity of the vow. Historians find this detail both poignant and a powerful symbol of the anchorite commitment. You lie back down, the effort having exhausted you. The world begins to blur at the edges. The sounds from the churchyard fade into a low, indistinct hum. Your life begins to play out in your mind, not as a linear story, but as a series of vivid, disconnected images. You see your mother's face, young and beautiful. You see the flash of a pig running through a muddy street. You see the bishop's stern face during your interview. You see the first stone being laid to seal your door. You see the green eyes of dust, your first cat. You see the face of the demon in the darkness. You see the golden light of a divine vision. It all flows together, a river of memory carrying you towards the sea. There is no fear. You have been preparing for this moment for over 50 years. You have died to the world once already in a grand public ceremony. This second death feels quieter, more natural. It is not an end, but a transition, a final doorway to pass through. You think of a passage from the Ancyrene, which you know by heart. It says that death is but a stumble on a straw, a minor trip on the path home. The cell, which has been your entire world, begins to feel like a waiting room, a departure lounge. You have been sitting in this small, dark space waiting for your name to be called. And now, you can hear it being whispered, not by a demon, but by a voice you have longed to hear your entire life. Your breath becomes a shallow whisper. Your heart, which has beaten out the slow, steady rhythm of your confined life, gives a final, tired flutter. The last thing you see in your mind's eye is not the darkness of your cell, but a brilliant, welcoming light. And you step into it. The silence in the cell is different now. It is no longer the silence of contemplation, filled with the quiet presence of a living soul. It is the absolute, empty silence of the grave. On the other side of the wall, the town knows. There is no official announcement, but the ceasing of your faint, rasping cough. the untouched broth left at the service hatch, and the profound stillness that emanates from the stones are message enough. The living saint has completed her journey. Father Thomas, vested in black, leads a solemn procession to your cell. With him are two strong men carrying heavy iron hammers and crowbars. The crowd that has gathered in the churchyard parts silently to let them pass. They stand before the wall of your cell, the very wall that was sealed with such ceremony more than half a century ago. The mason's work has held true. There is no visible seam, just a solid face of stone. Following the bishop's ancient instructions for this very eventuality, the priest indicates the spot where he knows the doorway was. The men swing their hammers. The first blow rings out, a shocking, loud crack in the reverent silence. It is the sound of your solitude being broken, the sound of the world coming back in. They work for a long time, chipping away at the mortar, prying out the stones one by one. The stones you watched being laid are now being removed. The circle is being completed. Finally, they create an opening large enough for a man to stoop through. The priest is the first to enter. He holds a lit candle, just as you did on your first day. The crowd presses forward, craning their necks to see inside the legendary space. The air that wafts out of the cell is cold and musty, smelling of dust, old stone, and the faint, sweet scent of death. They find you on your pallet bed. You are a tiny, shrunken figure, your skin as thin and translucent as old parchment, your white hair a halo around your head. You look peaceful, serene. Your hands are folded over your chest. It is as if you have fallen asleep. Your cell becomes an object of intense fascination. The townspeople peer in, their eyes wide with awe. They see the simple pallet, the small table, the crucifix on the wall. They see the well-thumbed pages of your psalter. They see the small, hollowed-out space under the floorboards where your feline companions are buried. It is a scene of extreme austerity, and to them it is as holy as any cathedral altar. Your body is not moved. The anchor hold. Your home and your prison in life will now become your tomb. This was a common practice, and a highly sought-after one. To be buried within the church itself was a great honor, reserved for bishops and nobles. To be buried in your own cell, a space already considered sacred by the local populace, was to ensure your status as the permanent, holy protector of the town. The masons are called back. They do not reseal the doorway. Instead, they construct a proper tomb over your resting place. A simple stone slab, perhaps with your name and the years of your enclosure carved upon it. Your cell is now officially a shrine. This is the final stage in your transformation. You are no longer a living saint, you are P.O.W., a patron of the work, a saintly intercessor whose physical remains sanctify the ground. The practice of burying anchoress in their cells is a key reason why archaeologists have been able to find and identify these sites. The presence of a skeleton within the small, single-roomed structure is the telltale sign. These remains provide invaluable information about the physical health, diet, and lifespan of these extraordinary individuals. The story of your life, which you lived in total secret, is now told and retold, growing with each telling. Miracles begin to be attributed to you. A woman who was unable to conceive prays at your tomb and falls pregnant. A man with a withered arm touches the stone slab and claims to feel a warmth spread through his limb. Your legend, which began in your lifetime, now flourishes in your death. Your little room, the place you went to disappear, has become a destination. It is a focal point of faith, a place of pilgrimage, a source of local pride and spiritual power. Your choice to withdraw from the world has, in the end, made you a permanent and powerful fixture within it. You have become an echo in the stone, a story that will be whispered in this churchyard for generations to come. Your life is over, but your work, it seems, has just begun. The stone slab that covers your body grows smooth over the passing years from the touch of countless hands. Your story solidifies into legend, and your name becomes a permanent part of the town's identity. For a time, your little cell is the spiritual heart of the community, but the world outside your wall, the world you so successfully ignored, never stops changing. A generation after your death, the sickness you heard whispers of finally arrives, the Black Death. It sweeps through the town with terrifying speed, a silent, invisible tide that leaves devastation in its wake. The church bells no longer ring for the canonical hours. They toll an almost constant funeral knell. The people flock to your tomb, praying for your intercession. But the plague is relentless. It empties houses and fills the churchyard. In the aftermath, the world is a different place. The old certainties are gone. The population is smaller, the social order is shaken, and people's relationship with God is altered. Some cling to faith more fiercely than ever, while others are left with a deepened bitter cynicism. Your memory is still honored, but the steady stream of pilgrims to your window dwindles. They have new, more pressing griefs. Another century passes. The wars with France, which were a distant rumor in your lifetime, have ended. The kingdom has been torn apart by its own internal conflicts between noble houses. The world is becoming more centralized, more political. The local, intimate faith of your era is slowly being replaced by a more organized, more distant form of religion. And then comes the great upheaval, the Reformation. The king breaks with the Pope in Rome. The old ways are declared corrupt, superstitious. The monasteries are dissolved, their wealth seized. The veneration of saints and relics is condemned as idolatry. Your world is turned upside down. Priests who once sprayed at your tomb now preach against everything you represent. You are no longer a holy saint. You are a symbol of the old, discredited faith. Your tomb, once a site of reverence, is now an embarrassment. One day, men come on the orders of a new Protestant bishop. They chisel away your name from the stone slab. They plaster over the squint that looks into the church. They may even take down the walls of the cell itself, using the stones to repair the church roof or build a new wall for the churchyard. They are trying to erase you, to scrub the memory of your strange, radical piety from the historical record. This is the fate of many anchor halls. Some were converted into simple storerooms or even cottages. The practice of anchorism, which had flourished for centuries, withers and dies out almost completely. It is a way of life, a form of devotion that no longer makes sense in this new modern world. A world of print, of exploration, of individualism. The idea of choosing to be walled up in a stone box seems not just strange, but insane. And so you fade. Your story becomes a half-remembered whisper, a footnote in the parish records. The location of your cell is forgotten. Children play in the churchyard on the very spot where you lived and died, with no idea of the profound human drama that unfolded beneath their feet. But echoes remain. A strange bump in the church wall. A local legend about a lady of the wall that parents tell their children, the story's origin long since forgotten. And centuries later, a new kind of scholar and archaeologist, a historian, might come to the church. They might notice that strange bump in the wall, consult an old map, and begin to dig. And they might find you, a skeleton, curled in the earth where your pallet once lay, your bones telling a story of arthritis, stillness, and a long, long life lived in the dark. Use it now in this quiet space beyond time, and you ponder the legacy of your choice. You wonder if it was a triumph, a tragedy, or a footnote. You gave up everything the world values: freedom, family, comfort, experience, for a single, focused purpose: to get closer to God. You traded the horizontal life of the world for the vertical life of the Spirit. The world may have forgotten you, but that was always the point. You didn't do it for the fame or the legacy. You did it for the stillness. You did it for the stillness. You did it for the whisper of God that you could only hear when all the other noises had faded away. Whether anyone else remembers or understands is irrelevant. You heard it, and for you that was enough. And so, the echo in the stone fades into the deepest, most profound silence of all. The story is over. The cell is empty. The world that created it is gone. All that remains now is this quiet moment, here in the soft darkness of your room. You can feel the story begin to dissolve, like a dream upon waking, its details softening, its edges blurring, leaving behind only a feeling, a sense of stillness. There is nothing more to consider now, nothing to analyze. The journey is complete. You can let the figure of the woman in the wall drift away, letting her take with her any final, lingering thoughts you might have. Let her carry them into the quiet past, leaving your mind clear and calm like a still moonlit lake. The only thing that matters now is the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. A soft, easy rise and fall. Each breath is an anchor holding you gently in this present moment of comfort and rest. Each breath is a quiet wave washing away the remnants of the day, leaving the shore of your mind smooth and clean. You can feel a pleasant heaviness beginning to spread through your limbs, a warm, welcome weight that invites you to sink just a little deeper into the softness beneath you, into the peaceful darkness that surrounds you. You have walked a long way in this story, and now you have earned your rest. There is nowhere else to go, nothing else to do. You are safe, you are comfortable, and you are ready for sleep. The final page is turned. If your eyelids are still not heavy, another story might be the final lullaby you need. Sleep sweetly. Good night.